And it's a bold move to stay in the division. It's a bold move. Coach Dungy was talking about it in the green room on Sunday. Denny Green gave Coach Dungy his full blessing when he jumped from the Vikings to the Buccaneers when they were in the same division, the old NFC Central, in 1995. That can create some hard feelings, as the Patriots and Jets learned when Bill Belichick saw Eric Mangini go to New York in 2006-ish, 2007-ish, right around there. So it can be ugly. It can be awkward, and it just makes that rivalry a little spicier moving forward.
Yeah, and it's such an interesting thing because I can only compare it to my career, like free agency. When you know free agency is coming up and, now they have the legal tampering period, I think was maybe the first or second year when I was a free agent. And you start getting those calls and your agent's telling you, all right, this team's interested, this team's interested, this team says they'll probably go, around this number. But the pressure, the team needs to know because you're the first guy they want to sign. So if you're not going to sign, they need to move on to the next guy. And how fast you have to make those decisions. And now I got to imagine how much harder it is as a head coach to now try, not a head coach, a coordinator and Ben Johnson of you're trying to prepare for a game. And instead of knowing that this opportunity is coming up, you already know who's out there. You already talk to these teams. You already know how much they really want you. It's like having to do the free agency process just a little bit earlier during the most important time of your current team's season. And I just can't imagine as you're game planning and you're doing all that, but then you're taking a break. And I've talked to Matt Patricia and different guys, Brian Flores, when they went through it, of like, all right, you're trying to put that down for a few hours to go and do this meeting where you have to be prepared and do all these things. And then you're putting that back down, going back to game plan. But I think for all Lions fans, if you watch the game, Ben Johnson was on. He drew up some plays in that game against the Commanders where you were like, he was prepared. He was ready to go. It wasn't on him that they lost. But, I think what Ben Johnson will be able to do in Chicago is settle things down from all of the talk and everything going on. And I think from being in Detroit, he has to understand exactly what they went through. It's years of just failure and different coaches coming in, and watching a guy like Dan Campbell come in and just put the team on this one ship and say, listen, this is the way we're moving. This is the direction. Nothing's going to change that. I don't care what happens. Only winning a few games the first season doesn't matter. Stay the course, stay the course, stay the course. And the interesting thing will be, is Ben Johnson that kind of guy? Is he the guy in front of the camera? And it's been talked about, over the last, year and a half, 2 years, how he stayed put, how he didn't leave when everyone thought he was going to leave. He was the hottest name. And now you're just hoping, as a Chicago Bears fan, he stayed put to pick up those last few pieces that he needed to be a head coach, to watch Dan Campbell, to see it kind of operate another year, to see what he wanted to do as a head coach. But I think it's the hardest thing for these guys to go in and have to now assume this bigger role, when I could just see Ben Johnson just in the film room all week. This play will work. This play, like just drawing up all of these great plays that we saw on Sundays. Like now you have to transition to being able to do that, but also being able to do all the extra stuff as a head coach. It just seems extremely hard. Some guys master it. Some guys, it's a struggle.
There was a thought among those who know Ben Johnson that he might at the end of the day be inclined to stick around another year or longer because they have a juggernaut there potentially. He loves working with Jared Goff, and as the mad scientist who's drawing up all of the plays, he's not the guy that has to stand in front of the team, stand in front of the media, possibly be doxxed after a playoff loss and have people show up at his house. That's the difference between being head coach and offensive coordinator. And look, the money for a high-end offensive coordinator, $4 or $5 million a year, he might have been in a position to get more. And for all we know, there was an effort made to see what the best offer is by the Lions in the event he would stay put. Why wouldn't you want to find out before you make your final decision? Okay, here's what we do, and that's why you have an agent. That's why they get 5-6% of whatever you make in that industry. Let me know what your best number is. Let me know everything you're going to offer this guy so I can take it back to him and we can have a conversation. Bears, what do you got? Jaguars, what do you got? Who else? Raiders, what do you got? Lions, what do you got in the event that he decides to stick around for one more year? And at the end of the day, he didn't. And someone that I've known for a long time and that I trust most of the time had a few observations that I think are worth sharing. He must really like the quarterback. he must really love the idea of working with Caleb Williams, because he's staying in a division that has 3 other teams that were 29-4 outside of the division in the regular season this year. They were 0-3 in the postseason outside of the division, but nevertheless, 29-4 outside of the division. Juggernauts in Detroit, in Minnesota, and in Green Bay this past year. Bears have the talent with the quarterback position. And also, we mentioned the Dungy jump to Tampa Bay in 95. A lot of times you don't see that. We mentioned Mangini in 06 to the Jets. Usually when you jump out of the division. He must have a level of confidence, and he can take this Bears team and compete toe-to-toe with Dan Campbell. And it shows he's not afraid of competing with Dan Campbell. And you look at Ben Johnson, he's kind of a normal-sized human. Dan Campbell is not. And I got to give Ben Johnson credit. It's a little David and Goliath going on here. Ben Johnson, ready, willing, and able to stare down Dan Campbell, even if he's got to get up on his tippy toes to do so. It just makes for some juicy storylines when the Lions and Bears get together. That would have been in past years a rivalry that is the Fox 6 team on Sunday at 1 o'clock Eastern, kind of buried in there with all the other games. This is now prime time. This is a big deal. Bears-Lions games in 2025 with Caleb Williams and Ben Johnson together, and then the Lions and whatever they're going to do post-Jared Goff. Dan Campbell talked about that yesterday. He's confident he's going to have a plan. He was kind of speaking of Ben Johnson in the past tense, so it felt like this was coming, and they have work to do, because they may have to replace, we're going to talk about this coming up, they may have to replace their other coordinator as well. The Lions are going to take a blow here. They're going to have to take a step back and regroup and figure out who are the best coordinators on both sides of the ball to move forward. So there's a lot going on in the NFC North this morning.
It sure is. And you think about how hard that is. And being in New England, we had years of that, whether it was Matt Patricia leaving and Josh McDaniels leaving and Brian Flores leaving. Like, we just had a run where it was just like whoever stepped up into a position, they ended up leaving to go to become a head coach, or leaving to go, leave with one of the coaches that left to have a bigger, better role there. So I think it's one of the hardest things to do, because now you have to evaluate what I have here, which probably makes the most sense if we can just promote somebody and stay in the same rhythm, because we are a good football team. But then it's like, is that person ready, or do I want to go outside? And then we have to kind of reset. It's such a tough position that Dan Campbell's going to now be in. But, going back to what you said, I think Ben Johnson, I think the one unique thing about going to a team in your division is he knows the Chicago Bears defense. He studied them on film. He's watched them. He sees the players they have. He has spent a lot of time playing a team 2 times in a year of watching what they do. And then on the other side, as he's watched Green Bay's defense, Minnesota's defense, within that, he watches the Chicago offense. So he sees that. So there's no team that he's probably seen more of than the teams in his division. So now when you get the opportunity to, possibly go, I think, for a coordinator, like, you might want to turn, like, these teams, but like when you think about the Raiders, how much has he really watched the Raiders? I'm not sure. So maybe he turned on a little extra film to see the Raiders. But when you talk about the Bears, I don't think he had to watch any extra film. He's watched them over the last few years as a coordinator, and he knows what they have there. He knows some of the young players. Like, he's seen that. So I think that's probably somewhat of where that confidence comes in of, hey, like, I saw what they were doing. I saw, whether I like Jalen Johnson or the different moves they made. And on the other hand, he might have been like, man, if they just could have done this or got this guy or done this way. So I'm sure he has a lot of things he wants to do different that he already knows, and not because he wasn't thinking about the Lions, just from watching this team over and over the last few years. And I think that brings even more confidence when you go into a team that you've seen over and over again, that you can kind of make it happen there.
Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.